Hey everyone, welcome into the Raw Knuckles podcast.
We'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share with a friend.
It is more than just a game, and especially when you're talking about an organization, a franchise like the Montreal Canadiens, that jersey means so much to so many people, and it's not lost on us players. And I think the more years you get to spend in the city, the more you start to understand that.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension. That'll be a fine. Alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive.
All right, welcome to the Raw Knuckles podcast. Been looking forward to this. Brendan Gallagher joining us today. Tim Stapleton, my partner. Welcome to the show, Brendan. Just finished working out, did you? Getting in shape for next season?
Yeah, another day in the gym. It's been a good summer here. I've enjoyed it. Obviously, I like coming home, spend some time with my family, but a big part of it is getting in the gym with my old man and putting in the work. So, it's been a good summer for us so far.
How long you usually take off?
A week to 2 weeks. I think this year was like 10, 11 days, something like that. And it's not like you're going hard right away. You're just kind of getting back in the gym and, fixing your body and getting it ready to go so you can start working out. But yeah, you take about, I think it was 10 days this year, and then you're back at it, doing what you need to do.
All right, Brendan, I want to go back to the beginning and I say the beginning because when I first moved back to Montreal, I lived back in Boston. I moved back. I got sober. I changed my life. I moved back here, and I had some opportunities. And when I came back, I went to training camp to see what's going on in training camp with the Canadiens. And it was your first camp. And I'll never forget sitting there in the stands. And this little guy is out there buzzing around, running into people. I'm there. Who is this kid? So I had to run and get the sheet, and I looked. And I said, "Okay, Gallagher, Irish kid. Sounds like looks like this might be something here." And I didn't know anything about you at all, and just seeing the way I said, "This kid is going to play here someday. He's got to." And because I didn't know anything about you, where did that drive, that determination, that like just going after it attitude come from?
I actually remember that training camp well as well. They sent our flights out, and I was one of the only players who had a return flight about 3 days later in camp, and I was kind of pissed off about it. So I remember, calling my dad and complaining, and he just basically told me to shut up and, if you want to earn it, go earn it. So I was playing a little pissed off. But that's probably a big part of it is, my family, both my mom and my dad were very competitive people, played competitive sports, hate to lose. My dad is one thing, but my mom is one of the sorest losers ever, but it wears off on us. She hates to lose whatever you do. And it was kind of instilled in us at a younger age. No matter what you do, if you're going to do it, you do it the right way. And it's just a part of all us kids. It's in our identity, and you grew up with it, and it's part of a big reason. Obviously where I am today is how I was raised by them, and I'm definitely really appreciated with the values and the obviously the life lessons that are instilled in you at a younger age.
You were born in Edmonton, and then your family moves to British Columbia. Where did the hockey start for you? Did it start in Edmonton and then just continue when you moved to BC?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing hockey at a really young age. We are growing up in Alberta. It's cold, so you have some long winters. So we were one of those families with the big outdoor pond in our backyard. It was my dad was out there setting up lights, and he had his own little makeshift Zamboni and shoveling it off, and a bunch of the neighborhood kids would come over. So I mean, I was skating at 2, 3 years old, organized hockey at 5, and it was just something I always loved to do. I was okay at it at a young age, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. But you just loved being with your friends and doing that. And I also loved playing other sports. I just wasn't as good at it. So at a certain age, I remember I had to stop playing lacrosse at a young age because I was basically getting beat up too much. I had to stop playing baseball, when I started playing junior hockey. But hockey was something that I was able to continue to keep doing. And if you're able to continue to keep doing something you love, why not? Why not give it a shot?
Yeah, Brendan. So you go to BC, and what year were you living in BC when you first went to play in the Pee Wee tournament in Quebec?
So that would have been my first year in BC. We had moved from, I was 12, 13 years old when we had moved out to BC. And I had known a couple players, and one of the players I had played with before was Kevin Sunder, who in our age group was the best player. Everyone had talked about him. You move out to BC, he was the big talk of the town at 12 and 13 years old, and he had played at the Burnaby Winter Club, which was about a 45-minute drive from our place. My dad said, sure. Not really understanding what Vancouver traffic was like. We signed up for that year, and we had a good team, but we sent ourselves out to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, and one of my best memories. Played with some really good players. I remember Ryan Nugent Hopkins was on that team, but a lot of guys that went on and had good American League and played over in Europe careers. And one of still friends with a lot of those guys. One of my best friends today, actually, Josh Nichols, the guy I spend pretty much every day with in the gym. He's playing over in the KHL, was on that team, and I think we went like 52-0 in BC, but we went over to that Quebec tournament and got humbled a little bit. We lost, and it was one of our only losses of the year. But I remember trading the pins, and it was kind of my first little experience over there in Quebec.
Nux, what's the goal you were talking about? Like he was like 7 years old or something?
Yeah, in the Pee Wee tournament, there's a goal that he goes down and scores. He runs the goalie over, and it's the same thing he did in the NHL his first year. I mean, it's hilarious. If you go to you Google Brendan Gallagher at the Pee Wee tournament, they show you that goal. But looking at your style of game and certainly your size, what was your biggest influence, I guess, growing up as a kid? Who did you look up to in hockey, and who was your heroes?
In hockey, and I mean, I couldn't be in a better situation right now. It was Martin St. Louis, and since he's been coaching our team, just talking to him and trying to learn as much as you can. The one thing that always stuck out with me from a younger age was how competitive he was. He was talented. He scored goals, but he competed and he had to earn everything that was given to him. And I don't think that was ever lost. And when he was still in New York and we were playing him in the playoffs, I was actually on the ice for his overtime winner. Had a pretty clear view of that one, and he didn't say a word to anyone that whole series. We were trying to get him off his game, trying to do whatever you could. You could just see he was focused. He understood the moment and the situation, and he stepped up for his team at a good moment. That's kind of what he did his entire career. So hockey wise, he was always someone that I watched closely and just tried to pick up a few things, but more the demeanor and how he approached the game, and definitely his competitiveness was something that stood out for me.
So you played junior, Vancouver Giants. You played junior, you score a lot of goals. You set the record there, and you actually beat the record of the guy you looked up to. What was his name? Show Train?
Adam Corshane.
Corshane.
Yeah.
Adam Corshane.
Yeah.
So you grew up around that team because your dad worked for him, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I was not a lot of kids get to experience what I did. I was, 13, 14. My dad would go to work. I would show up with him to the rink, and I got to see how they prepared and the workouts that the players would do when they weren't playing, and the summer training. And I'd go sit in Don Hayes' office, and my dad would just leave me there between periods, and I heard a few things and listened to a few things. And as a little kid, you're just taking this information in and understanding what it's going to take to get to the next level, and kind of the way that the game is approached to that level. So I was hanging around all these guys that used to, fill up water bottles and dry towels and do whatever was asked of me, but you're just, hanging around the guys. And, hockey players are always so good at making everyone feel comfortable. Even as a younger kid, they did such a good job of taking care of me. And, you watch them play, and then you imagine yourself playing there one day. And fortunately that was able to happen for me, which was pretty special as well.
2010, you get drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. Now, you didn't go to the draft, did you?
Didn't go to the draft. My draft year, I felt like I had a pretty good year, but I didn't really talk to any teams. Montreal was the only team. Von Karpen, he now works for Vegas, but he met with me out here in Tawasin. took me for a meal, and that was the only team I really talked to all year. So my expectations were pretty low. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to the draft and not get drafted. So I sat at home. I watched it with my mom. And by the fifth round came around, they kind of stopped showing the picks anyways on TV. So you just kind of wait for a phone call. And she was the happiest person in the room. She got to call her mom and her sisters and brag about it. And for me, it was cool, but you kind of have an understanding. It's just a day. There's a lot of work to be done, and I was just excited to be joining such a storied organization.
So how excited were you? Like, first of all, who were you a fan of? What NHL team?
Well, I grew up. I grew up an Oiler fan, being from Edmonton, and I actually had an uncle who was a diehard Habs fan. He's your typical, doesn't miss a game, talks about all the Stanley Cups everywhere you go. So I actually kind of grew up not disliking him, but having a little bit of frustration towards the organization, just because I had to hear my uncle brag about him too much. But since I was drafted, he doesn't. There's not a year where he doesn't come down and get to experience it. And that's been pretty cool for me to see as well. And it's been tough with all my family and friends there in Edmonton. It's tough to make them flip. They still they cheer for me, but I don't know. It's hard to make them fully come on board.
So that the Habs uncle, obviously, he must love that. But listen, coming here the first time, like you said, you came here. They give you a round trip ticket. How much did you know about the history, and how long, if you didn't know a whole lot about the history, how long did it take you to pick up on just the whole aura of what the Habs are all about?
Well, I felt like I knew, but you really don't know until you get there and you get to experience it. And one of the great thing that the team does is, especially early on, I was fortunate enough to meet so many of you alumni, and just to talk to you was, you hear the stories and you see the faces, and then you see the jerseys in the rafters, and just to get the opportunity to spend days with you guys. I remember at the golf tournament, they used to, let me golf with Mr. Cornway, and you just spend a round of golf, and we've played a round of golf together now, because it's those kind of moments where you just kind of get to talking and get to chatting, where you really you have an understanding of how important it is. And then there's little moments that happen. I remember both the Sean Beliveau funeral and the Guy Lafleur funeral that we just had, when the stories really start coming out. And there's little moments that stick out for different people and how important these people were in their lives. And it is more than just a game. And especially when you're talking about an organization, a franchise like the Montreal Canadiens, that jersey means so much to so many people, and it's not lost on us players. And I think the more years you get to spend in the city, the more you start to understand that.
And you've certainly been here since the beginning, and I'd love to see you retire with that jersey on, to be quite honest with you. Not many players do that, and if there's one I believe that deserves to, it's you. Now, that being said, I just want to go back over the career a little bit, and Bergie comes in here, new GM, and I kind of got the sense that, listen, there's a lot of pressure in the city, the media, the French media, the English media. And I kind of got the sense that Bergie tried to, and not in a bad way, but protect players from the enormous amount of expectation there was in this town, and kind of living up to the past. Did you kind of get that feeling as a player here?
Well, the one thing that I'll always appreciate with Burge is how loyal he was to us. If you showed him that you were in it as much as he was, he would go through a wall for you. And as players, we had so many conversations, be it postseason, during the season, where if we had asked for something or we had told him something, he was going to get it done, and he was going to do that for us. He wanted to make sure that our room was our room. We had everything in front of us to succeed. And he was really hard. I mean, you see him celebrating those goals, and that's raw emotion from Burge. That's who he is, and that's what he wanted. And he wanted to win here as bad as anyone else. And not a lot of people can say they were general manager of this organization for a decade, and he was able to pull it off. We had some really good teams. The impressive part is we had some bad years, but we were able to bounce back pretty quick. And the fixing of the problem was very quick, and that was something that as players we appreciated a lot.
No, I was just gonna obviously I was gonna ask about that you in the minors, that you spent some time in the minors, and I have a lot of respect. I played a lot in the minors. What'd that do for you? It looks like you went down and then you just never looked back. And was that the attitude of, like, when you were down there and what you were experiencing, or like how did that prepare you? What was your experience like in Hamilton?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went. It was the lockout my first year pro, so I went into Hamilton, really expecting to be there the whole year. And we had a really young team. Every other team had NHL players coming back, and these bona fide American League players. I remember we had 7 20-year-olds, and all 7 of us were kind of playing key roles and key ice. So we didn't win a lot of games, but it was some really good experience for us to go down there and play against these players. And I remember, you got your power play reps, you got your penalty kill reps, you got your practice time, and the coach was hard and fair with us. So if you were willing to understand the systems and play with it, he would work with you. And if not, it was like anything else. He wasn't going to baby us. So it was, you were forced to be a professional early on, and that was something I appreciated. And I remember right before the lockout ended, I remember my last American Hockey League game until I went on that conditioning stint last year. We were getting killed, and I believe it was Rockford. I just jumped a guy and spent the whole third period in the penalty box because there was never a whistle. So I just sat in the penalty box the whole third period, watched us lose, got on the bus. It was like 3 a.m. And then we got into Hamilton, and Sylvain Lefebvre, who was our head coach, called me in, and he said, you're going to training camp in Montreal. I never want to see you again. But I was still kind of pissed off at the game, so I didn't really say much. And I kind of regret that, because I kind of wanted to thank him and say stuff like that. But I was still kind of pissed off. So I just kind of nodded my head and went, okay, I'll see you later, kind of thing. And then sure enough, came to Montreal. There wasn't really much of a training camp. There wasn't really much of an opportunity to, showcase yourself. You just kind of went with what the coaches were telling you to do. I sat out the first game. They put me in the next game, and I was able to make an impact early on and kind of feel comfortable and earn my spot on the team.
Yeah, you sure did. You sure did earn your spot, and earning that spot along the way, I think certainly the fan base embraced you, and I think the media likewise. And how can't you love somebody who goes out there and gives it his all every night? I think that's what really opened everybody's eyes to what Brendan Gallagher was all about. But that being said, let's look on the flip side and let's talk about the referees, because early going in your career, man, they were up your ass. And I think a lot of times you were misunderstood in the sense from the referee standpoint that, listen, you were out there getting knocked around, knocked down, get back up. And I think a lot of times you were treated unfairly because they looked at you as someone, they thought you were diving, for Christ's sake. And I think you got a bad rap in the early going.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it was understanding how to communicate with them. I agree with you. That's pretty much exactly what happened. But the communication level and how I came across it wasn't in the best way. And it took some years to kind of recover that and repair that relationship between us. And there's all these guys, you see them so much, and regardless of what they say, they're going to remember that. So it's, that was something for me to learn. And I understand the way I play, I'm going to make the referee's job harder. They're not naturally going to like that, but if you can earn their respect, they're going to understand it. And I think early on, they probably didn't respect me as a player, but I think the more that they've been able to watch me play, I'm not doing anything to embarrass them. I'm not diving. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm just playing the game hard. I'm going to be in these areas. I've always been okay taking a couple shots or an extra shot. I just don't want to get the cheap penalty my way and, let me kind of go back at them. And that's kind of the way that the refs have approached it. The more that you can talk to them and communicate and, you understand their side of it a little bit. And, they understand that I'm still trying to do my job and help my team win. And part of that is probably going to put them in some tough situations. But if you do it the right way, there's definitely a way to do, to walk that fine line. And, I do feel more comfortable with the referees and how, we've been going. You still have your moments, you still have your games, but you make sure that you talk to them next game and make sure it doesn't carry over.
Knox, when you played, like who was similar to the Galley? Like who can you recall that was similar to him when you played?
It's hard to come up with someone similar to Brendan. I look at some of the smaller players like Linsman, Keith Acton, but they weren't like Brendan. I mean, they were more guys that use their stick more and stick in the face to try and protect themselves. Where Brendan fearlessly going to corners, stuff like that. I would say Matt's Naslund in a way. Matt's was like Brendan in the fact that he'd go to the net hard, he'd stick his nose in there, he'd go into corners with big guys and wouldn't shy away from that. So yeah, I'd say Matt's Naslund if there was a player similar and could score goals, right? So, and I look at the beginning of your career, they 15 goals the first year, then second year, Brendan 19, almost breached the 20 goal mark, and next year you got 24. You were playing with Plekanec that year. You played with some really good centermen, and your last centerman being Deneau, before he left, you had 2 30-goal seasons. When you look at those two players, how easy was it for you to play alongside a guy like Plekanec and Deneau, both? And what are their differences, if any?
Well, I think a big part of, they're two very good players too, but the similarity is you're on the ice against the best players in the world, and I've really enjoyed, that kind of challenge that came with it. You kind of understand you have to be more engaged, you have to think, and the way that you work with these guys who are very good face-off guys, and they're going to put you in good situations, and you can kind of work together. It's more a give and go style of hockey. That type of player is something that I've always meshed well with. So you throw in Tuna, who the three of us had a lot of success. We just enjoyed working together, finding solutions. Sometimes when the first period wouldn't go well, it was something we enjoyed because you get to work together and you find a way to make it work, and you try to bounce back and make it okay. You had a bad period, let's not have a bad game. That kind of mentality. So it's yeah, it was just a challenge because if you have a bad night, you're going to get embarrassed because you're playing against the Sidney Crosbys and the Connor McDavids and those types of players in the world. And they'll make you look silly if you're not ready to play. So it was a challenge that I've always enjoyed.
I remember, nights myself playing the NHL, and I'm going to ask both of you this in a sense. When I was playing, doing all that fighting, there were times I'd be sitting there on the bench or in the penalty box saying, man, I wish I could score more goals. I wish I could do this. Did you ever have that feeling sitting on the bench, being a smaller guy? Did you ever have that wish? Maybe I wish I was maybe 6'2"?
You know what? No. And it's weird to say. But from a young age, one of the things my dad always told me driving home from the rink, whether I had a good game or bad game, he always told me my size is my advantage. And it might be, something that I've been able to trick myself into believing, but there's some things that I feel like I can do as a smaller player that a big guy can't. And there's things that I have to understand I can't do that a big guy can. And you're all given different things that are out of your control. You deal with what you can control. There's a lot of things you can work on and get better at, and that's kind of the stuff I try to worry about the most. And you try to improve that way. But I've never, I don't know what I'd be, but I'm not, and there's no sense in wasting energy thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think for me, I kind of wish I had what you had, Gally. Like I was a small guy, but I didn't have that. It just took me time, I guess, or it took a lot for me to have that kind of fuck you attitude, I guess you want to call it. But when I was in the minors, I wish I was 6 foot every day. I was, I wish I was bigger, and because I just thought I would get more of an opportunity. But when it's all said and done, no, I liked playing at the size I was at. I just wish I, maybe could have had a little bit more like oomph to my game, but it is, I don't really, like you said, I'm not, and I definitely accepted who I was and enjoyed being a little guy.
Yeah, and I enjoyed fighting and not scoring a whole lot of goals. But Brendan, we talk about the injuries a little bit, and I kind of, I guess I want to know how much that bothered you and set you back when you broke your fingers blocking that slap shot from Boychuk back in 2015, 2016. You battled through that. And then you're back in the lineup. And then I think it was Shea hit you with a slap, all right?
Next year.
Not
the
on
next
purpose,
year he got
but
me, yeah.
the next year,
Well,
and then you break your hand. Now, I remember the people in the media here saying, oh, my God, he can't hold his stick. The next year he come back, he can't shoot the same. There's something wrong with his hand. And I'm like, stop, will you? And you go out and score 30 goals the next 2 seasons. It's like, how tough was that for you to battle through that? And how long was the rehab on both hands?
You're kind of competing with yourself a little bit. So the first time I did it, I think I got back in, I think it was like 5 weeks and 5 days. So the next time you just want the rehab to go quicker. So I think it was like 5 weeks and 4 days or something. And that was something that I could feel good about. It was, as you go through these rehabs, being away from the team is kind of the hardest thing that you have to do. So you need something to kind of push yourself and motivate yourself. So, we're surrounded by, the smartest people that the team has to offer. You listen to them, you do everything they say, and they're doing what they can do to get you back and healthy. And you just trust in that process. And, you understand your body better than ever. Some things are going to be an adjustment. Sometimes it's going to be different, but you work at it. And, like you've done your whole life, it might not work right away, but you keep working, you find a way and you find a solution. And for me, part of that, I had to change my stick. I had a tougher time shooting. So I changed my curve a little bit, made it a little bit bigger. It allowed me to shoot the puck like I had before. And, that's that. You make these little adjustments as you go and you deal with it. And, the one thing that can never take away from you is your brain. You're still able to think the game. You're still able to find solutions on the ice. And when you have that, you can still continue to be a good player.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the COVID and the impact that had on not only you, but your teammates. Now, how difficult was that playing in front of no fans? All right. Keeping yourself motivated, having to wear a mask, staying in the hotel. How difficult was that mentally, emotionally, and just everything on you?
It was tough. I mean, it was like, I guess everybody in the world went through it. And I don't think anyone enjoyed it. It was tough. And we were no different. The things we love doing the most are hanging out together, going for dinners on the road and being a team. And these things were taken away from us. So the enjoyment of the season, especially when you're going through these losing streaks, it's tough to get out of. And you like you said, you can't go out for dinners. You can't leave the hotel. You're wearing the mask around the rink. You're not really supposed to socialize. You're doing these tests every morning when you're grumpy and you're pissed off. It was, and then there's no fans in the stands. So everything that we love about playing in the National Hockey League, all these things were kind of taken away, and you just had to play and do your job and understand that you got to block all this stuff out and find a way to be successful. But there's some nights where, maybe you show up to the rink and, your legs feel a little bit heavier. It's a Monday night, but you step out on the ice at the Bell Center and there's 18,000 people cheering for you and you get that boost. We lost that year. So it was, it was just tougher to go through that grind of the season. And then once you got to playoffs were whatever. You don't even really notice the rink. It is what it is. And you're just trying to find a way to win that next game and keep advancing.
I want to ask you about the coaches you've had at the National Hockey League level. And let's say, if I'm correct here, Michel Therrien, Claude Julien, Duchamp, and now Marty. Did you have Jacques Martin at all back at the beginning?
I didn't.
No,
Michel Therrien was my first coach.
Those were your coaches, right?
Yes.
Those four. Now, when you look at those four personalities, they're all pretty different. Which ones, I guess, I'm not asking you to throw somebody on the bus, but who are the difficult ones to play for? And if they weren't difficult, who had the most impact on you as a player and you like playing for?
Well, early on, I think you're the most, I don't want to say coachable, but you're learning the most early on in your career. So I think the combination of Michel Therrien and Gerard Gallant, who we had on the bench there, was so big for me. Big Mike, he was he was black and white. If you did what he said, you'll play. And I fully appreciated how he coached me. He was hard on me, but I understood that as a player, and I love that as a player because I knew if I did the right thing, I'd be rewarded with ice time. And early on, he would shelter us. He would take us off the ice when Ovechkin and Crosby were on the ice. And as a young kid, my first couple of games, I didn't need to be playing against those guys. I didn't need to be put in those situations. So he protected us as young players. And then as the season went on, he kind of understands, okay, maybe they can handle it. There's a time and place in a game where I'll test them, I'll figure it out. And having Gerard Gallant as our forward coach, his pedigree as a player and a coach, those were two guys that I could learn from a lot early on. I really appreciated that. And then we went to Claude, as Big Mike's time was coming to an end. It was probably the right thing to do to move on to another coach. And Claude came in with all this experience. And I actually felt like he kind of hated me because we were in Boston. He was in Boston before, but it was obviously the opposite. He obviously had a ton of respect for us as players, and he worked with us, and we were kind of all slumping and feeling a little bit down. He just worked with us. He understood where we were, and kind of built us back up as players. And then Dom kind of came in that exact same situation where, we were kind of, as players, it was tough to say. We were just in this hole, and a new voice and a new mindset. We just changed everything, changed the forecheck, the neutral zone, the defensive zone. We just changed stuff just to change it, and hopefully it would get us out. And it worked. We went on a little bit of run there, and now with Marty, like I said earlier, I'm just really excited to pick his brain and learn. He came in with a mindset that, he has a plan. He believes in his plan, and as players, we're gonna, when you listen to him talk, you have no choice but to buy into it. His confidence level in his structure, and it's not so much teaching the forecheck or teaching he wants to teach your brain and teach you to think the game of hockey. And as older players, that's something that you're excited about because you can always learn new things and new tricks and new ideas on the ice. And he just wants you to think the game away from the puck, and maybe a couple, the puck's here, it's going to be moved there. Don't necessarily wait for the puck to be moved there to understand that you need to be in this position, kind of thing. It's just thinking ahead of the game and getting your brain going. And that's something I'm really looking forward to. So you can learn everything from every coach. You don't have to like them. You have to respect them. You have to listen to them if you want to play. And, I think every coach has something to bring to the table. You just have to understand how it can help you as a player.
What about teammates? What about early on, like a veteran teammates that took you under their wing? I know you were close with Brandon Prust, and I'm friends with Rennie Bork and guys like that. But was there any veteran guys that kind of helped you early on?
Yeah, well, I lived with Josh Georges my first 2 years, and I was actually down. He has a softball tournament, so I head down to Kelowna and spent some time with him and his wife Maggie. And those two let me live with them early on was pretty much everything for me as a young kid. There's so much going on. You're playing in the National Hockey League for the first time, and there's so many distractions that you don't really need to think about. And they took care of all that. All I had to worry about was playing hockey, and I'll forever be grateful and appreciative of him. And Georgie was a great guy to learn from. He was a leader in our locker room. He understood the way the game should be played, and I appreciate that. And then our captain that year was Brian Giunta, who was another smaller player who I could look up to the way he played. And he couldn't have been more approachable. He sat beside me in the room and helped me out whenever I needed, had some fun with him. He's still a guy that, when I go to Buffalo, I see Gio. So these are teammates that meant a lot to me in my career. And anytime you get a chance to see them, you're always excited to.
So teammates that mean a lot to you. I can't imagine these two guys, Shea Weber and Carey Price, they got to be right up there. And when you being part of that team that went to the Stanley Cup Final, how big a piece? Obviously, we know the big piece that Price was, the way he played in the net. But I remember Shea came in here, and there's some smart asses on the radio or in the newspaper would say, leadership, oh, he's great in the room. He's a leader. I want guys who are great on the ice. But tell us just how important that leadership in the room is from a guy like Shea Weber.
Well, you could talk to every single person that Shea encountered in his career, whether it be a player, a coach, a training staff member, a flight attendant, a hotel. He treated everyone with with respect. He understood that they were doing a job, and when you're around someone like that, it makes you want to do these things. And he created a culture in our locker room. He was somebody that, from the moment he came in, first of all, he's an all-star pretty much every season. I think he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. He had won medals at the playing for Team Canada. He was a, he won World Junior or Memorial Cup championships. He was a winner, and he did all these things the right way, and he treated people the way they should be treated. I think when you're talking about creating a culture in a locker room, it starts with your leader, and it started with him, and it really ran through our room. And then when we were adding pieces, you bring in like a Corey Perry, and you have a Pricey, and you have an Eric Stahl. And that's how culture is built. And you have these guys that have won, but they do things the right way. They treat people the right way. They understand when a teammate's going through a tough time, how they can help them, and they can pull them aside and not embarrass them. And they also understand when you need a little kick in the ass as well. And those are that's what you need in a locker room to be successful. And that's what those players did.
All right. I last season, wanted to talk to you about last season, and your numbers were down, obviously. And listen, I watched you from the beginning, and through most of your career, there weren't many nights that you didn't have legs, and you could tell. All right, you play 82 games. You might have had 10 games a season where you could say, "All right, Brendan's legs, they ain't going tonight," and it happens to every player. There's no question about it. Last year, it seemed a little more often, and you admittedly said that your body let you down last season. Do you think that was because of the circumstances of the season and some of the injuries to COVID? Or do you think it's Father Time starting to catch up with you at 30 years old?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not worried. First of all, I think when you look at what we went through with the bubble, my body went through a lot there. Needed a surgery. My hip was in a tough spot. That needed to be repaired.
Yeah.
Basically had no summer. Then we go into our season, and it's a COVID season basically, where you're not able to get your workouts really in. You're not allowed to spend the time in the gym. We go on our long run. Really only had a month to prepare and get ready in the gym, which is, I'm used to three and a half. So it's, I just found 15 games into the season, my body felt like we had played 60, 70 games already. And that just built up and built up. And, I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to recover. And so, spending a good hard summer here and putting in the training and getting back to what I've always done. I already feel much better than I did even showing up to camp, and we still have a couple months to go here. So I'm not too worried. I understand, what I am as a player. I'm still going to be able to do all those things and get back to, to being a contributor at both ends of the ice. So I'm confident. I hope that gives some Habs fans a little bit of comfort. But, I understand there's expectations, and I didn't reach those expectations last year, but I'm feeling pretty good about getting back to the game that I know I can play.
Those nights you don't have your legs, I mean, I know for me, I was screwed. I was hoping for power plays or something. Like, is that when that happens with you? I mean, is that, do you start thinking like I'm going to start stirring shit up here and start getting a little bit, be more of like a rat or that side of the game for you? Or what kind of goes in your mind when that happens?
Yeah, well, there's different ways to get yourself going. For me, I like to, if I can get a couple shots on net and, I can feel like I'm engaged, or I can block a shot, or I can finish my check on a guy. These are ways that I feel like I'm engaged in the game. And when you build up these little moments throughout, when you get the puck on your stick and you get a chance to score, you feel confident. You feel like, okay, I'm ready to handle that moment. Sometimes it's maybe the team doesn't have much life, and it's just causing a scrum or going at their best player and just grabbing them and, getting the other team all riled up. These are little things that throughout the game, you just have a feel for it. You don't want to be sitting in the penalty box having your guys killing a penalty for you, for sure, but you have to be smart about it and find ways to create energy for the group. And some nights are easier than others, but when you play those 82 games, every game, look at the standings, every game's so critical nowadays. So can't let any slide. You got to make sure that you're just trying to be a contributor every night.
All right, Brendan, a few more and we'll let you go. I want to ask you about going to the Stanley Cup Final. And listen, I feel so grateful having gone there one time and winning it. and you get there that one time, and obviously we know what happened. You guys fell short, and it was an awesome experience, I'm sure. But the pain of that, how difficult was that for you? And at the end, getting to the end there, and you're right there, and you guys aren't able to pull it off. How difficult was that?
Well, I mean, we describe it a little bit differently. Habs fans, it was an unbelievable run. It was an experience. For us, it sucked. It was one of
Yeah.
you dream about this your entire life. You dream about getting there, but you dream about winning. And for it to be over in 5 games, and I remember at first I really felt bad for myself. Selfishly speaking, I was sitting there thinking like, that sucks. But then I remember looking around our locker room, and I remember seeing Webb's face, and I remember seeing Pricey's face, and Pears' face, and that was what really got me. And I no longer felt bad for myself. I felt bad for these guys that had gone to war their entire careers. And I know that's a terrible term, but it's battle, and what they put their bodies through, and the way they grind it out. It's battle through injuries year after year. They were just so deserving of it. And the game felt cruel in that moment, because I felt like those guys deserved it more than anyone. And as teammates for those guys, I would have liked to deliver that for knew we were losing some key pieces. We knew we wouldn't be back as a group. And afterwards, that was one of the tougher nights I've ever had.
Yeah, and I can certainly see why. And looking forward here now, you're coming back. There's new management in place, Gorton and Hughes. Marty's here, which I think is awesome for this organization. But it looks as though, and I don't know the plan, but from the outside, it looks like they got some rebuilding to do. Are you in for that in the long haul? Listen, everybody wants to win a Stanley Cup. Are you going to be in that for the long haul here?
I want to win a Stanley Cup. I want to win a Stanley Cup in Montreal. That's always been my goal. And I've always said, we've had bad years. Players determine the rebuild. You look at LA right now, what they did last year. They forced management's hands. They weren't supposed to be in the playoffs. They weren't supposed to be a good team. They proved that they're better than people thought. And then they go out and they add a big piece like Fiala, and they're probably going to do more. I mean, that's what happens in our game. So if they'll have me, I love being in Montreal. I love the city. I love being able to say I'm a Montreal Canadian. Like you talked about earlier, I'd love to retire here. And as a player, it would kill me if I play my whole career and I don't get the chance to win. And don't get me wrong, I loved seeing my really good friend in Lecky win a Stanley Cup, but I'm also jealous as hell. So it's it's one of those things you want to experience for yourself. But I couldn't be more happy or more proud of him. He's a guy that went through so much in his career, ups and downs, first line scratch, and little things that he didn't deserve, because he always played the game the right way. He did everything that a team could ask of a guy, and he goes to Colorado in the perfect situation, and couldn't have stepped up more in bigger moments. So, it was great seeing him hoist that cup.
Well, that's why I texted you right away, and I'm like, you got to be happy for this kid, because you're right when you say that about him. That kid, he plays on the wall. He kills penalties. He can play in any situation. And boy, Colorado used him every way. Killing penalties. He was on the big line. He was on the power play. Like
they get a 5-on-3,
and we saw he could handle it, right?
Yeah, big moments, 5-on-3. He's on the ice. He's a guy that coaches definitely love, teammates love. It's hard to find a fault in him. Honestly, he's a really good friend, put it that way, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I got one question. What's the handicap at? What part of the game is? And I'm a golfer, so where are you at? Where's the index? What's the best and worst part about your game?
I mean, well, I kind of cheat. I only play the same 2 courses over and over again, so my putting is a little bit better than you'd expect, because I know these greens. But I can play anywhere from a couple over par to 8-9 over par, depending on the day. I will say this: I golfed with my dad yesterday, and he was 6 over par, which is by far the best round of his entire life. I think his previous best was like 13 or 14 over par. So I don't know what happened yesterday, but I watched him do that. Now I don't feel so good about my game.
you're coming back, looking to certainly go back to the Stanley Cup. Are you ready? And do you want that C on your chest here in Montreal?
I think everyone does. That's one of the biggest honors in sport, is to be named captain of a group of men fighting for the same goal, and to do that in a city like Montreal is with all the the history that comes with this organization would be an honor. And that said, I do believe that we have a few guys capable of doing it and capable of leading. And I'm just going to do my part. I understand what I am as a player. I understand how I can help a group and how I can be a leader for a team. And if that means wearing that letter, I feel like I can do that. If not, I still feel like I'm able to do my job. So we're as a group, we need to take a step forward, and to do that, we're going to need a lot of guys to step up and probably take on more of that responsibility of being a leader and creating that winning culture that we've had for for a few years prior, and get back to feeling good about ourselves leaving the rink. And that's our only goal.
Well, I hope you get that C, and I hope you're able to certainly lead this group of players, this team, back to the Stanley Cup Final and eventually win it. I'd love to see that for you. I got to tell you honestly, when I watch you play, and I watch you from the beginning, there's you don't cheat the game, and you don't cheat your teammates, you don't cheat yourself, and you're certainly deserving of it. And I hope you get there, and I hope you achieve that goal. And you certainly, in my estimation, deserve that C on your chest. No question.
Oh, thank you, Nux. It means a lot. Thank you.
Soldiers to the left, soldiers